The Matic that we know and love right now is just it's very complete, but I imagine it always wasn't like that. So like can you give me like a quick like 1 or 2 minute summary of like how it got started of like where did this idea come from? Because everyone wants to build a robot, but how'd you choose to build a vacuum robot?
Great question. And first, I will start by saying that for us, it's definitely not complete. We actually think of Matic as far from complete. And if you had come to our company in April of this year, prior to Wired article coming out and giving us perfect 10 for 10 rating, I think our team would have told you that our product is not that great, or some may even have used the word it's shit. And the reason being is we define this sort of minimum lovable product specs instead of minimum viable because we are coming in existing market. So there was a set of features that we had to develop. So we created this minimum lovable specs, and I still want to say about 50% of those specs are not done. So while it feels really complete, there's a lot more we want to do, and we don't think we're even remotely close. There's a long vision there on how we can improve and make it better. So that's first part. And in terms of the idea, honestly, it's a bit of our past. Prior to this, me and Navneet worked on this company called Flutter, which was gesture detection via webcam, which was really, think of it as a Microsoft Connect, but we just wanted to use this RGB cameras here. And the idea was that if you're in front of a TV and you want to mute it, well, instead of raising the hand up in the air and then trying to find a mouse button, why can't I just shush it? We already have a
Right.
body language. So we worked on it. That was back in 2012, 2013, way before AI and computer vision was mainstream. Ultimately got acquired by Google. But that was the first time we realized that what we built was really, really cool technology, not a product. And we think of robotics as a technology, not a product. Ultimately, it needed to solve a problem. And one of the problem I personally had was I have three kids, golden retriever dog, and I had tried all robot vacuums. And at some point, I was under this belief that Dyson would 100% solve this because Dyson is a really innovative company. And I bought Dyson's 360i robot vacuum in 2016, and turns out it was, I'm not trying to put a shade on them. It was just honest customer reviews that it was probably the worst robot I ever used. It was an
They're
amazing
really
vacuum, but terrible robot.
yeah, they're
And
really it's I've gone through I think 4 of them by now.
yeah,
I originally started out with like just the bumper robot, where if
yep,
you're not familiar, it's basically just a robot that has no vision, no
yep,
intelligence. It just bumps around and
bounce.
uses sort of
Very
just like a
first Roombas,
pathfinding network, right?
right?
And it reminds me, I don't know if you had any experience with this, but when I was younger, I did something called First Lego League, where
Hmm.
basically you build out these like Lego based EV3 robots, and
Yep,
you've got to go and complete a course. And I built out because we had one of those original iRobots or Roombas or something like that. That was just
right.
the bumper, and I was like, I feel like I can create a better version of this with just like the ultrasonic sensor, the
Yep,
vision of the first Lego League robot, and I did, and it worked. I'm like, why is it? Why aren't they using this?
yeah,
But I'm glad that you saw that and you were like, hey, we can make this better. But continue.
yeah. And then to give them benefit of the doubt, if you kind of go back, dial back to 2001. So I'll go a little bit of a history. So first, robot vacuums weren't Roombas. Actually, they were Electrolux. Electrolux came out with version that was $1,500 back in 2001. It failed. So Roombas came out in 2002. And the reason they chose to build a bumper version instead of any smart version is because the sensors were really expensive back then. And they realized and they wanted to build a robot that was priced below $200. And the reason being is on it, and this is honest reason that they talk about sometimes is that below $200 you don't have to ask permission of your partner or your wife to get a
Yeah.
buy a gadget. So they wanted to do so. That's why they built a robot. What I call is a robotics 1.0, and that was literally like you agreed. You just put a blindfold around your eyes and you sort of bounce through the wall, and that's how I thought of that robot. And then it evolved where Nito came out and a few other companies came out, and they started adding single pixel lidar. And at some point in 2016, the realization was that single pixel LiDAR is literally still like having a blindfold, but now you have this one laser that is pointing to the wall. And because of that one laser, you can determine sort of like a blueprint like map of a home, construction blueprint like map of the homes, which is what all these robots do. But it still doesn't give any 3D understanding or contextual awareness. They're
And houses don't just stay the same. They're not static,
exactly,
which is a
exactly.
very important part because you might have I remember a couple years back there was a model that said it would map your home and it mapped it and you would have to like give this like super clean version of your house to it as the initial image understanding. And then let's say you leave some shoes or something like that out in the hallway, it wouldn't like understand that shoes are temporary or something like that. It would remap and just say,
Right.
"All right, I can never go back to this zone."
Correct. So it's not just mapping, it's sort of having a memory or delta the way we do all kinds of, you're absolutely talking about the correct things. And there are still more challenges. One is that 2D map doesn't have contextual awareness. Um, the other one was understanding that, if you're on a carpet, if you use a really high suction, which is what Dyson robots would do. So what literally happened is Dyson robot got onto one of a really nice rug, had an amazing suction power like any other Dyson vacuum, but it didn't have enough torque in the wheels to push through. Because sometimes even if you use manual vacuums on a rug, you have to push it through because of high suction power. So it didn't have it. We left. I was at home, so it stayed on for 45 minutes, and eventually when I came on, picked up the robot, entire patch of the rug was gone. So that's when we realized that it needs to know on what surface it's on. It needs to adjust its efficacy. So that's how we started. And ultimately, if you were to go into the mapping point of view, even today, this is true for any other robot except Matic, any indoor robot, not just the robot vacuum. Almost all of them build a map that are relative maps. What I mean by that is they start from the dock and then they know that position based on the location of the initial dock. That's like saying that I can navigate your home if I come through front door, but if I came through side door or back door, I'm lost. What
Right.
we do, if you remember the original thing, is that we actually start mapping from middle of the room once it rolls out of the box. There is no reason for you to put it on the dock and it just discovers. So what we do is build an absolute map. And that's critical to understanding this point of view that indoor world is probably the most dynamic, unstructured, chaotic spaces that are constantly changing. And that's why the innovation in this space has been extremely hard. And the reason we realize this is because we had a computer vision background and at a very high level, if you kind of dial back to 2016, 2017 timeframe, we realized that there were 200 plus self-driving car startups in Bay Area at that point in time. So the thought was that wait a minute, 200 plus self-driving car teams think that they can solve driving problem, but not a single company believes that we can build a robot that doesn't need to bump. So that doesn't make sense. And at a very high level, we realized that if you're building self-driving cars, you still need Google Maps because car needs to know where the road is going. And you still need GPS because car needs to know where they're located. But in an indoor world, without having a 3D awareness, contextual awareness, how does robot know whether it's on the right side of the couch or the left side of the couch? And this is where computer vision is the right way to go because indoor world is built by humans for humans to fit and optimize for our visual perception system. So we
Right.
just sort of started thinking about this idea that shouldn't we have level 5 robots inside homes in an indoor world? And if it's level 5 robot, well, what does it even mean? And the answer was that if level 5 robot for cars means that cars drive like humans, then level 5 robots for indoor world must be that they behave like humans, navigate like humans, remember things like humans, avoid obstacle like humans, clean like humans, manipulate like humans. Well, then they should have perception system like humans as well. So that was the
Right.
realization, and we just didn't think anyone was working with that orthogonal view. So that's how we started out, and we thought there was a huge opportunity. And really, the goal is to solve Rosie the robot. It's not just floor cleaning robot, as you may have expected. We do want to eliminate all repetitive, mundane, and boring chores or from home and save users time and energy. But the step one was building this robot because even in human child's life, from 0 to 5 year old in their lifetime, they only between 0 to 5, all they do is learn how to perceive the world, how to
Yeah.
navigate the world. So in the same way, in the context of floor cleaning robot, we're teaching robot how to perceive the world on its own way. And our thought was, can we build a robot that can go in any indoor space, not just homes, self-explore, self-localize, and then go from point A to point B precisely 10 out of 10 times regardless of the changes in the environment, regardless of the shoes being in the middle, regardless of the obstacles being in the middle, or changes in the lighting and settings. If you can do that, that's a huge value proposition because back then, my 3 year old wouldn't be able to do point A to point B 10 times in a row.
Right. I remember that was one of the big interest points that I had in it. There was this tweet where I was like, I saw them taking off the box, and I was like, no way that it can just like instantly self actuate and then just kind of roll off of it. So I recreated it when I got mine here, and I saw it just like I just took it off,
Yep.
and then it just kind of rolled out and sort of started mapping and everything like that. And that's cool, but you can kind of get a basis of understanding because it enters a new environment and then
Hmm.
maps and stuff like that. But what really did it for me is in my office, I closed the door or
Hmm.
whatnot, and it was stuck because it couldn't get back to dock and it
Right.
just wouldn't go. So it kind of parked itself back so it could see the door. And when I
Yep.
entered the office, this was like in the early morning, I entered
Right.
the office, it woke up and saw that the office door is now open. And then it was like, ooh, I can go now. And it just kind of exited back and went to the dock and then continued running. And with a reference point oriented vision network that's like reference or dependent on that base, it
Yep.
wouldn't be able to do that because it wouldn't know what a door or a blocker is. But it
Correct.
was kind of able to get that visual understanding, and I realized that a lot because with my Tesla, with the full self driving, there's a lot of that stuff where it's like this garbage can isn't going to move like a car. Like you've got to have this basis of understanding of like this is going to move, this is a dynamic object, and this is a static object. Like this table or chair isn't probably
Correct.
going to move, but this shoe might move, and if the user picks it up for me, then I can just continue on with it.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to kind of see, you can kind of see in the same way that you can see like full self-driving thinking and the robot just processing it. I'm trying to think what was a an example. Oh yeah, I had my backpack on the floor
Hmm.
and Matic was just kind of going around it and cleaning it out. Oh no, not my backpack. Behind me, I have a large green screen sheet, and
Okay.
I normally put it up for streaming, and it
Hmm.
kind of cuts the room in half.
Hmm.
Matic was cleaning in here, and it was just cleaning the half of the room that it could.
Hmm.
So I came in here preparing for our call. I picked up the green screen, moved it over to the side where it is right here,
Hmm.
and I'm not even joking or glazing. Matic
Yeah.
instantly saw that there was more surface area that it could then append to its path, and it reset, went back over to the corner where the closet is, and then restarted its path, including all of this stuff where it
Right.
is like the entire room. So it's really, really cool to see just like the thinking capacity of the
Thank
Matic
you.
and it being like, oh, there's something cool that, or there's something new that has opened up. I can explore into this space.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And this was something we deliberately worked on. This is not obviously coincidence. And the reason is because um, as I said, I have three kids, pets, and they get curious about the robot. They want to be in front of it. They want to be around it. So being able to say that, okay, now they're out of the way, I still need to clean was a critical piece of the puzzle to solve it. So our thought was from day one that robot vacuums in sort of the robotics 1.0, which is the disk robots and sort of the 2D floor plan kind of robots. They're great for homes that do not change as much. But in family environment, once you put kids and pets, homes are constantly changing. They're constantly
Yeah.
moving around and throwing things on the floor, and that's where intelligence was really needed.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. So take me through what the early day, because I think we've seen some photos and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and I'll put those up. But I think we've seen like the early days of what it looked like. But how did you sort of start with this iteration process? Did you have like this cardboard robot with like two cameras, or what was your kind of process developing out Matic in the earlier days?
Yeah, next time on your visit to San Francisco, please come by and I'll walk you through all the prototypes. But it was
I
initially
will.
just proving ourselves that, hey, this is something we could do. So there were a
Right.
couple of literally, not cardboard, but wooden prototypes where we sort of added very much like a typical robotics project where we got dev kits, including Turtlebots, and started playing around with it. Um, then we also took Makita Vacuum, opened it up just to see how vacuum works and created prototypes to see if we can work this together. And specifically, just that can we do depth with just two cameras and can we do it
Right.
precisely? So, StereoNet and some of those things. And then the next step was that, okay, now we think we can do it. Let's actually make sure that this is autonomous. So
Yeah.
first year and a half was really just building proof of concept prototypes and proving that everything works. And then started talking to users and understanding what their needs were and what their requirements were. And based on that, we kept iterating. But initially, a lot of things weren't determined. Like we didn't know that we would use 5 cameras. We didn't really know that it will look the way it would. We genuinely, the way we thought about it is that we know it's not going to be a disk robot, and there were two reasons for it. One is disk robot has a very flat vantage point. So if you even if you add vision, their vision is a little bit like an ant or a bug, and it doesn't necessarily see it. And our vision and the world that we've created is for the top down or 45-degree angle bird's eye view vantage point. So that's the vantage point we created. So Matic's height is sort of like a crawling human child. Um,
Right.
right? And they see top down to build the perception system. So we use that analogy. And then second reason for that building a slightly taller robot because of it was also that we are actually genetically predisposed to being scared of anything that crawls. This is why dogs and cats and pets and kids are just very much unafraid of disc robots. We as adults can get over and realize that, hey, this is not dangerous to us, but kids don't have understanding, pets don't have that understanding. So they are remain very afraid of it. And that's where we knew that we needed to make a robot that looked like a robot. Because if you're going to have a robot with a family home, I don't want my daughter to cry every single time Matic runs. I don't want my dog to go crazy every time Matic runs. And it happened with the disc robots in past. So that was another priority for us, that let's make sure we build something that seems friendly and very nice to users.
Right, and I can imagine also the issue with, like, the flat, thin, coin-based type of robots is they're thin. It's like you can't have any storage or, like, with the Matic, there's you have your water storage and your dry storage for the vacuum bag. The mopping capabilities, I would think, would just almost be impossible on the coin robots, and then I think, you might have said it, but the biggest issue is in a house, our we don't live in circles, we live in squares, and
Precisely.
a circle robot can't get into the corner, and even if it has that little, like, flippy thing on the edge of it, it still can't reach into corners. And that's one thing I've been very impressed with, where it will go and it will deliberately clean the edge just to knock out the junk that's under the dry boards, or the baseboards or anything like that.
Precisely.
And it just works extremely well on how it sort of is taking those edges and just like making sure it does like a full clean, full mop and everything like that.
Yeah. And we just sometimes it doesn't need to be a lot of thoughts. We just kind of did that thought experiment twofold. One was, if disk shape was the perfect shape for cleaning, all the manual vacuums would have shifted that way too. But it turns out manual vacuums do remain rectangular with the rectangular cleaning heads. So that's really the right way to go from efficacy point of view, because they're clearly better at edges and corners. So that was one aspect of it. And the other aspect of it was also that if you actually flip the disk robot, the actual vacuum is 2 inches away from the wheels, because you have got to have a wheels on the side and then vacuum. So even though it feels like it's going over various things, it's really not covering the entire space. Even if it's right
Right.
next to the edges, it really is 2 inches away. So we just felt like that physical limitation was really hard to overcome, and we had to do it. And to give credit to Roomba and Disk Robots, in 2002, when you didn't have any of those maps or awareness, building something that bounces was good, because it's like a Pong game where if it's circle, it's easier to pivot and keep bouncing around. You can have a
Yeah.
rectangular bouncing around, right? So in a sense, but once you add intelligence, it has to move to shape and physics that is much more, or physical dimensions that is much more conducive to robots and better efficacy.
Right. Yeah, and I agree. So we're going to move on to a little bit more of, I think it's a fair controversial point in our new age of like IoT devices and stuff like that, is the privacy aspect.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's like the Matic has 5 cameras, one on the top, two in the back, two in the front, which it needs for the vision understanding, but there's been so many, like, you've seen the articles where it's like
Yep.
this the ring cameras and all that other stuff where it's like someone could hack into it. So
Yep.
I know you guys have a unique take on privacy. So could you go a little bit into how you kind of look at privacy, how the image models and all that stuff work?
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up. We so prior to Matic, we were at Nest Cameras. We built security cameras, and it was very obvious from security camera usage and customers that people did not like cameras inside their homes, especially family with kids. They were very much afraid of their data going there. And we started with this very basic premise as a fathers and family men that we shouldn't have to jeopardize privacy and security of our homes just to have floor cleans. So how do we
Right.
solve that? But on the flip side, you absolutely need cameras. So we started with this point of view that why can't we do everything on the device? Why can't we build it in a way that the appliances work where you potentially don't even need Wi-Fi or internet connection. You need Wi-Fi, but not an internet connection to clean. And we just thought that was the right way to do it. So we built robots such that everything once your robot comes inside your home, every single data that you choose to, even telemetry analytics data is opt-in, number one. And number two, the actual video data never leaves your home. It gets processed on the device on that NVIDIA chip. And if your phone, which has the app and robot are on the same Wi-Fi, even from robot to phone, data transfer happens locally, sort of like a local
Right.
Wi-Fi, local WAN. Uh, 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 so so that way it never goes to internet. And if you actually decide to turn on the remote connection and control it remotely, then it establishes sort of peer-to-peer or device-to-device end-to-end encrypted tunnel. So that data just does a round trip. That again, there is no
Right.
server, no cloud. So the way we thought about it is very simple. That if there is no data to store or save in the cloud, there is no way to be hacked or leaked. So we just don't store it. We process it very much live, and everything happens on the device.
Yeah, and I think that's just another technological advancement where it's like you can't fall victim to the claim where it's like, oh, all the Matics are actually just remotely controlled overseas or something like that by another workforce where there's a bunch of tiny pilots with their Xbox game controllers piloting the Matic around the room. But I think it's just impressive that it all is on device. So can you talk a little bit about like the on device processing? Because obviously 5 camera feeds running at what, 720, 1080, what resolution?
Yeah, it depends. It changes based on what we're trying to do, but it's uh, 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 anywhere from 360 to 1080, depending on
Yeah,
the type of things we're
that
doing. Yeah.
that's a lot of video stream. That's a lot of bit rate. So
Yeah.
talk me through what you can about like the technical and like the pure processing stuff of it.
Yeah. At a very high level, honest answer is that it's a constraint we chose, and it's a constraint we chose to create, and that's why it's an efficient thing, which is, you know, the analogy I can draw is that there is clearly the foundation models and AI large language models are large and there's a lot of data requirements. But then I think January of last year, maybe this time around last year, DeepSeek came out and they had apparently built a very small model. And now we're distilling small models and it's working as well. So constraint really results in a innovation, and there is always a way to optimize it. We think you can not a lot of our computes and programs are extremely optimized at the moment, not because they can't be optimized, but because we just have too much processing and too much storage available. So when you
Right.
add that as a constraint and build from that perspective, you really, really take very specific mindset and say each line of code is very intentional. So there is no sort of a magic bullet on how we're making it work except intentionality of making it work and making it happen. And it's a grind. It's something that takes a longer time. That's why it took us 8 years to get here. But doing one, we always knew that if we do this right and if we can get it to work, that is the only way we can make affordable, actually intelligent robot or accessible, actually intelligent robot. And that's really where we're in doubt. And from stack perspective, it's really just about cutting every single writing the which is we had to go back and write the entire stack from scratch. So everything from Linux kernel to firmware to operating system to even Wi-Fi stacks, as much as possible, we've written the code ourselves in very much proprietary sense. And then the stack is built on Rust, which honestly was godsend for us. We got lucky that Rust sort of became popular around the same time that we've been working on it because Rust memory management is just phenomenal. So a lot
Right.
of those things where we wrote intentionally every single stack and every single layer of the system ourselves, software stack ourselves, we were able to make sure that everything is efficient. So it's not
Right.
just that algorithms are efficient, it's that entire stack was written from the purpose to make it work, and that gives us a lot of advantages. And
And I think,
if you try to do sorry, I'll finish
yeah,
it. But if you try to do ROS or any sort of open source library, generally you don't get it that way because open source library tend to have a lot more extra stuff that you may not need for your product.
because it's optimized for the community and sort of that extensibility,
Precisely,
and that's
precisely,
one of the benefits of like the proprietary code and building it for yourself is you build it for yourself and it does exactly what you need and it does that best. That's why it's like you can kind of compare, like I use it again, but like Tesla full self-driving versus I think it's
precisely.
the neuro or something like that,
Right.
where Tesla full self driving, it's incredible. I'm on the latest version of version 14, and it literally
So
feels
am
like
I. It's amazing.
unsupervised is like perfect. And then you go and look at some of the videos of like the Neuro or something like that, and it's at like maybe an equivalent of like FSD 11 in the terms of how well it can. It's very hesitant. It can't really understand people, and that's just the nice part about owning your stack. But I think what the most important part that everyone is looking forward to is at the beginning, you said that some of the employees and yourself see Matic as a very unfinished product.
Hmm.
So what's because for me, I'm a very narrow-sighted consumer looking at it like, hey, it cleans everything. This is
Hmm.
basically perfect. And like I said, I was like, the only gripe I have is it cleans too well. I've got to swap out the vacuum and everything like that a lot. But what's to come? What's next?
A lot of different things. I think which is I don't want to overpromise. So I won't go into where we will be a year from now, but I can tell you what are the issues that we still see. So if you got the robot, you still have to deal with maps. You still have to label the map. You still have to create a schedule. These are all abstractions we've invented. Why can't we just talk to it in a very much a natural way? So we sort of imagine this view that imagine if Matic was a real person, how would we interact with Matic in that scenario?
Right.
And can we extend that sort of thing? Right? So that's another part of it. Then you can kind of say, okay, if there was a real person, well, they would learn my preferences, they would understand my habits, they would adjust to my needs over time. So how can we let Matic do that piece of the puzzle? So voice is obviously one that comes to mind, which is we absolutely want to enable for you to say, "Hey, Matic, go clean my office," and it just does that. So each robot actually comes with four microphones. They're disabled at the moment at a firmware level, but we will enable them. And once we enable them with voice, you again local processing. You should be able to use the voice to direct it, and that's the beginning of it. And then you can say how where can we extend it? Can it understand my needs? Can it understand potentially my gestures? Can it understand what I want to get done? Can I
Full
also
circle from your original point where you just want to be like, hey, go clean that.
precisely, which is we've always had this belief as well that as computers get smarter, as robots get smarter, they should understand us. We shouldn't have to learn new UI, new UX, or point and click is an abstraction. So we need to absolutely get away from that as well. So just how do we make it so that it just feels natural?
Right. I remember I had put out a tweet about where I was like, "Hey, do you guys have an API or something like that?" Super simple, just to be like to be able to start because I wanted to mount like one of these buttons or
Yes.
something like that in my kitchen, so that
Yeah.
way whenever I leave, I could just click that and just have it start cleaning or something like that. And then whenever it detects that I'm home or something like that, it would like
It would
return to
just
dock. But I think I think I'm thinking too narrow, but if you can abstract on that a layer above and be like, it detects I leave or it detects I come
precisely.
back via sound or anything like that, and it can just go auto dock. That's
Correct.
an even better thing.
Yeah.
Now,
We so
um,
so to jump on that point, the idea we always say that it should just do this. You shouldn't have
right,
to press the button. It should just understand this, all these things. And there is one thing which we've talked about publicly in past that we are working on is dirt detection. We do want it to visually detect stains and dirt so that because the way we work is when we are cleaning, if there is an area that's very dirty, we actually pay far more attention to it and then move on. Um, Here, because it's not doing dirt detection, it just cleans in narrow paths. But if you can understand exactly where the dirt is and pay extra attention, or exactly where the stain is and pay extra attention, that's really useful. And that's really another thing that we really want to go and do.
Right. And this is a big pain point with a lot of hardware products.
Hmm.
And it was kind of seen with Tesla where the for the longest time hardware 3 was the newest model, but
Right.
then hardware 4 came out
Mhm.
and it was like, oh, it's got new cameras, new neural intelligence. How do you see, because you're pushing updates basically weekly, do
Hmm.
you see that you just want to optimize for the current hardware build, and then once you physically can't develop for this hardware, then release like a Matic 2 or something like that with
Yeah,
maybe more features on the hardware level?
that's a great question. So as we built, because we were able to iterate privately without needing for sell, we went through all those iterations, and we actually, historically, we were first building on Umbrella as an SoC, not NVIDIA, and we were ready to ship that product in mid 2023, but we realized that NVIDIA is the better platform to eventually go build, and it gives us much more flexibility for the long term. So we chose to switch it
Right.
versus, so that would have been our hardware 3 versus the hardware 4 thing if we had gone and done that. But we instead just chose to stay private and only ship quote unquote hardware 4. So that's really where we are. So at the moment, everything we want to do from our minimum lovable specs point of view, we think we can do that on current hardware, and that's our focus. And hardware is more than capable of doing it. In the long run, um, I suspect that without us wanting to move on from the current version of NVIDIA, NVIDIA itself might release a chip that is just the next generation, and then we'll have to
Right.
start using it. And when we do that, it would automatically result in an upgraded thing. And then just in that scenario, it's a little bit more like PCs and phones, that as computes get better, it does have an increased capability, and we will move. It doesn't make sense to keep using the old chip or old technology. So it's just a natural progression driven by a hardware ecosystem upgrade versus what we are trying to do. But in our mind, we don't want to upgrade unless we absolutely have to.
Right. I think that's good. And when that inevitable upgrade point comes, because it
Right.
will, because
Hmm.
now NVIDIA is basically betting their entire sort of market cap on AI and AI
Sure.
chips. So they're probably going to come out with some amazing killer like Jetson Nano chip. And when
Sure.
that point inevitably comes, a big pain point for some of the older users is like, what happens to mine?
Yeah.
So obviously, if you don't have an answer for this, that's all good. But it was like, what would happen to those older users? Would you have an upgrade path? Would you have a trade-in program? What would you envision?
Great question. So I don't. First, I want to kind of give you an example. So I do own Model S, which I bought in 2016, which does
Nice.
not have any full self-driving hardware. It definitely has the old chip. At some point, I was able to upgrade the MCU and at least have my entertainment system and software there. And I know that Tesla still supports that software. So our goal is that current robot will be supported as long as we can, as long as we're doing it. We're never abandoning the sort of customers in that sense. And then eventually, when there is a significant upgrade, if the upgrade is resulting in amazing, let's say, advancement in terms of usage, then we will
Right.
figure out what is the right thing to do for our customers. At the moment, honestly, we haven't thought that far, so I wouldn't have a right answer for you.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, that's that's super exciting to hear all the advancements and stuff like that. And it's exciting to know that a company is like really working head down on this. So before we wrap up, I'll give you the floor to kind of tease or think about, just like super far in the future, what you would want Matic to be. Maybe like, because everyone's kind of going into this like, humanoid, but I know that you don't want it to look like a creepy crawly or something that would not look like a robot. So just like thinking far out or maybe teasing what you might want it to look like. Go ahead.
I don't have a good answer on what it may look like, honestly. There are a lot of things we're learning with Matic and what customers are saying. There are things that we tend to think about, which is some of the principles we had are coming to light. So So it has to be something that belongs in a home. It has to be something that kids and pets are okay with it. It has to be something that gives a feeling of a keeps the feeling of a home and sanctuary intact versus acting as if there is a stranger inside my home. So there are a
Right.
set of circumstances that we have to solve, but ultimately, it has to really just save your time and do the task end to end. That's the first priority. And kind of, internally, one of the things we talked about it is that no one wants robots. What I mean by that is consumers find robots cool, we find robots cool, but R2D2 like robots are something that seem cool for 15 minutes and then you sort of ask yourself, wait, why do I need you? So
Right.
we genuinely talk about this point of view that customers want solution to their problems, not robots. And if it happens to be a robot and AI that solves that problem, great. But it is really just about solving the problem. So to me, we start with problem and then work backwards versus starting with a form factor and then working backwards, or humanoid and then working backwards. So that's how we think about it. That what is the right form factor for this problem? And if it turns out that there needs to be a one robot with a multiple set of options that we think is a little bit far away. Two analogies I can give you is, or one analogy specifically, I guess, is we think that history doesn't repeat, but it definitely rhymes. And there is a company called General Magic that tried to build iPhone back in 1995, and it was started by this two distinguished Macintosh engineers, and it was a phenomenal team filled with ex-Apple uh, um, ex-Apple team and who's who really, and they couldn't make it happen, and simply because it was just too early and too early for customers, not from technology
Right.
perspective too, but also customers. And what ended up happening is we needed a Nokia feature phones to get used to cell phone ID, and then we needed a PBS get used to sort of internet connected device or organizer kind of ID, and then Blackberries, and then that then iPods, and then at some point we're like, okay, I don't want to carry four device, and we understood the need for iPhone. So in the same
Right.
exact way, right now we are at a stage where customers don't even trust that a single robot can act intelligently. And that's
Yeah.
because we have 23 years of overpromise and under delivery with disk robots. So, first, really, is to just prove that a robot can actually be intelligent and actually be smart, and then incrementally build on top of it.
Yeah, I like it. I think that the future with this sort of intelligent robot is very exciting, and I am very excited to see all the weekly updates and new features that come. But yeah, thank you
Awesome.
for sitting down and chatting with me.
Likewise.
It's
Thank you for having me.
you've built, of course, yeah, you've built a great company, great robot, and yeah, it's cleaning right
It's
now. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's working away.
no, I can't hear it. So good. It's quiet. That's a good thing. The second, but I'd be remiss if I said that it's not me. It's the team. I just get to be the spokesperson, so I'm thankful for that. But it's the team that did all the work, and they deserve the credit.
Yeah, they did an excellent job. But yeah, thanks for sitting down and chatting with me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.